Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the call this afternoon. We're really glad you could join us today. It promised to be a great discussion. My name is Sam Cramer. I'm a senior program director here at NASEO, leading our energy finance and energy planning work. I'm joined by my colleague, Caitlin McBride. We're really glad to have you here today. NASEO is hosting the second call for NASEO members to discuss success stories from the establishment of the energy efficiency revolving loan funds under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Since we last met, energy offices have made a lot of progress on the implementation of the EERLFs in these programs. We're now starting to see some of the established funds begin to make loans. Minnesota, in particular, has already issued its first loans under the program, and several more states are reporting projects that are currently in the pipeline to receive loans. Currently, 36 states have received full awards for the EERLF program, and another 13 are either in conditional approval or are also awaiting awards for their own EERLFs. And the breadth of lending that these ERLFs will be doing is actually pretty exciting. So out of the 45 awarded states, either full or conditional, 22 states will be able to lend for residential projects, 28 will be lending in the commercial sector, and 23 will be able to lend for public buildings. And so several of our states will be lending for more than one sector, which is why those numbers add up to more than 45. But it really shows that, there's a lot of good activity and good work being done for the RLFs, and we're excited to share some of the latest and greatest here. This call will provide you all an opportunity to share updates on your own EERLF progress and also discuss lessons learned from the implementation of this program that are designed to build on the conversations and insights from the first call we had earlier this year. And we'll have three great speakers talking about their funds. We'll then go into and a little bit of a discussion between the speakers and myself as moderator, and then we'll have a conversation with you all in the audience for the rest of the time. So before I introduce our speakers here, I have a few housekeeping remarks. One, please put any questions you have in the chat box, or please raise your hand. As this is a Zoom meeting, please make sure that you are on mute unless speaking, because we don't want to have any background noise while our speakers are presenting. We'll also take questions once all speakers have presented, so to make sure each speaker has enough time to provide their remarks. And then also just please note that previous EERLF and NASEO Financing Committee and other calls will be accessed in the YouTube link in the chat box that we will be posting in there shortly. So with that, I'd love to turn things over to our three speakers. We've got three great states here that have made a lot of progress in establishing their energy efficiency revolving loan funds. And to help us talk through some of the best practices they've learned, we have Claire Brinley. She is a program manager with the Illinois Finance Authority and manages her state's EERLF. We have Ben Gress. He is an energy program manager with the North Dakota Department of Commerce, and he's going to talk about his state's pathway to establishment for EERLF. And we have Molly Kiick, who is an energy program manager with the Iowa Economic Development Authority, here to speak on her state's RLF progress. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Claire to provide her first set of opening remarks. Claire, would you like to get started?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. As Sam mentioned, I'm the program manager with the Illinois Finance Authority, or IFA. IFA is sort of this quasi-state agency. We're not our state's energy office, but we have sort of more flexible powers when it comes to lending. So the Illinois EPA decided to use us as kind of the third-party administrator to administer the loan program, even though we're still sort of part of the state. So IEPA got their award in May of 2024. They were awarded almost $16 million for their EERLF program, and they allocated about 90% of those funds to us to administer the loan program, so about $14.3 million. And I'm going to talk about our loan structure a little bit briefly, and then some sort of the timeline that we've faced and some challenges and lessons learned. So we decided to use a bridge loan structure for our EERLF funds. We will provide bridge loans between $50,000 to $1 million per building to bridge incentives that folks receive either from the state or for the federal government, but that typically come in once the project is over. So we kind of provide that upfront financing to help bridge that gap so that they can get the project started and completed, and then they pay us back with the incentives after they receive them. So right now, borrowers can bridge any federal IRA tax credits or direct pay provisions that they receive from the federal government. as well as any Illinois Solar for All incentives. So the state of Illinois has its own Solar for All program for low-income solar, not to be confused with the federal Solar for All program that was terminated, although the federal program was actually inspired by our program. But both of these incentives, the tax credits and the Illinois Solar for All incentives, come in a lump sum after the project is placed in service. So again, our bridge loan is providing that upfront capital to get the project up and running. Um, we also technically do have a co-lending or participation loan that we'll offer kind of in conjunction with the bridge loan, but our main focus right now is on marketing and advertising the bridge loan since they are shorter terms and allow us to cycle through the money more quickly. Notably, we are not using any of our ERLF funding for grants. It's all going into the loan program. So eligibility for our loan program, pretty much any type of organization is eligible to apply. But our target, we're kind of focusing more on units of local government or nonprofits, particularly maybe affordable housing developers. But the types of buildings that we finance will be any commercial buildings or multifamily buildings with 5 units or more. The only type of building that we're not doing is single family residential. And I think that we made that decision as a state because Illinois already has a lot of solar or energy efficiency rebate programs for homeowners and individuals. So we kind of wanted to target the other sectors that don't benefit as much from those programs, and really focus on trying to upgrade maybe older municipal buildings or schools or libraries, things that are more likely to be out of date. So the real criteria for the bridge loan is whether or not your project is going to be eligible for either the tax credits or the Solar for All incentives so that we have something that we can bridge. So while all of these folks listed on this slide are eligible for the program, really what we've been seeing is we've been getting interest from developers who are working with these types of organizations on their buildings, and the developers have been the ones that have more been reaching out to us about our program. So that's just something that we've seen. For the bridge loan program details, I won't go in super depth unless people want to ask questions about it later. But as I said before, the bridge loans are intended to be shorter term loans up to 24 months so that we can recycle that money more quickly. Or if you get your incentives, you have 30 days to pay us back after receiving the incentives. So either 30 days after the incentives or 24 months, whichever occurs first. The loans will be set at an interest rate of between 3 to 6%, depending on the borrower. And we're still sort of figuring out the fee structure, but the origination fee is going to be capped at 2% of the loan. And apologies, some of these slides are ones that I use for external audiences, but you all obviously know about Dave's Bacon and energy audits, things like that. So this is what our timeline looked like. IEPA first got the money in May of 2024, but we were preparing for them to get the money. So we actually signed our intergovernmental agreement with them in April before the full allocation was received. In December 2024, we published our informational materials on our website and released our pre-application documents, and we sort of began doing meetings with potential applicants and people who might be interested in the program and kind of getting a little bit of the word out. We did a few stakeholder engagement calls around that time as well. In March 2025, we published our official bridge loan and co-lending loan strategy on our website, which is still up. In June 2025, we finalized our underwriting criteria, and I don't have it on the slide, but at some point in between there, we also finalized our term sheet. So both of those were published on our website around that time. And then sort of since August, we've been starting to receive some full applications, some folks who understand the program, understand the audit requirements, understand all the documents that they need, and are having deeper conversations with them and kind of getting full application materials from them. And we actually received a couple energy audits that we've been reviewing and sending to IEPA in this time. So, we're hoping that we're going to close on our first loan, maybe first quarter of 2026, but we'll see. So that's kind of the journey that we've been on. Sam asked us to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we've seen, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. The first one, the biggest one, has been the audit requirements have been an issue. mainly because, well, a few reasons. One, they're not free, and IFA has been working to identify free audits or reduced cost audits that are out there. So we actually recently updated our website to include a lot of the energy assessment or energy audits that are out there. And also the Illinois EPA just released a new grant program for energy assessments. So we really hope that this is going to help with some of the barrier on the audit, particularly because, as I mentioned, we're doing these bridge loans for the tax credits. And so a lot of folks are doing solar projects, but they're including energy efficiency, but they're not necessarily already getting an energy audit done because their focus is on the solar and you don't necessarily need an audit to do solar. And also, obviously, the audit has to, if they're applying to our program, the audit has to recommend the solar. So that's been kind of a barrier where people are like, well, I wasn't going to do this audit. It's an extra step for me. It costs me money. And it has to meet certain audit template requirements. And so it's just been kind of a barrier, but luckily we've been working with IEPA and they have designed their energy assessment grant program to meet the requirements of the EERLF program. So we're really hoping that that will be a great resource. And also there are other available free energy assessments from some of the utilities in Illinois, since Illinois has this beneficial electrification plan that all of our utilities have to meet and provide some free energy assessment. So there are things out there. It's just sort of spreading the word and getting people comfortable with the requirements is taking some time. Um, Also, the funding limits are a little bit of a challenge. We capped our loans at $1 million since we only have 14.3 for the program. We don't want to spend, put all of our eggs in one basket and spend all of it on one giant loan. But given the complexity of the program and how many federal requirements there are, some people are not seeing it as worth it if they can only get $1 million from us to have to comply with all of Davis-Bacon and BABA and everything else like that. And that kind of ties in with the federal requirements. We haven't gotten there yet where it's been a super big issue because we just haven't closed any of the loans yet. I imagine it will be a problem because I'm working on other grants where I'm having to work with Davis-Bacon and BABA. And even when people say, oh, we're familiar with these requirements, it should be fine, something always comes up. But one thing that we are doing is we're working with folks that are getting other federal money for their projects as well. So they're already on board with all of the federal requirements. So I think that's been something that's been helpful for us is like working with folks that are getting HUD funding or other like a REAP grant. And so they already have to do it anyway. And so this is just the like closing that little gap that they're not getting from their other federal grants. And then it's not an extra burden to have to do Davis-Bacon, BABA, everything else. And then the last thing, I kind of already mentioned this, the program complexity has been a bit of a barrier as well. In Illinois, a lot of people really just want to do solar. Like they just want to do solar, and we have to tell them, well, you need an energy efficiency component. You need battery backup. You need HVAC, lighting, things like that. And then on the flip side, if someone is doing just energy efficiency, there's not as many incentives that we can bridge. There's not really a tax credit for energy efficiency. The Illinois Solar for All is for solar, not energy efficiency. So it needs to be the perfect combination of both, which, is good. We want them to be doing both, but then it's hard when you get a project that's just solar or a project that's just energy efficiency. It doesn't like fall in this neat little bucket that we've created. And I think that also creates some confusion about the program. And so being able to communicate that to folks has also been a challenge, is like communicating the program requirements clearly and succinctly, but then also, yeah, getting everything in there. So that is the Illinois Finance Authority program.
All right. Thanks so much, Claire. Really appreciate it. And for everybody, if you do have questions, please, just a reminder to please put those in the chat box, or you can also raise your hand once we're done when we're in the Q&A portion. Now I'll turn things over and go a little bit farther north to Ben Gress with North Dakota. You can talk about North Dakota's fund.
Can everyone see the screen
Yes,
and hear me all right?
coming through loud and clear.
Good. All right, I'm Ben Gress. I'm the Energy Program Manager within our Energy Efficiency Office in North Dakota. We are located within a division of Community Services, which is part of our Department of Commerce. And just to put a little clarification on North Dakota, this came up at NASEO's annual conference a few times a couple weeks ago, but this is where North Dakota is located. If anyone has any concern or didn't know where we were, we're right there in the middle, right up on the north border. So our Division of Community Services is basically the state's avenue to help various grant funding programs, government and state agencies, rural planning and development, research, and any other grant program implementation. Our state energy office oversees various Department of Energy grant funded programs, which include our state energy program and our ERLF, but also the ECBG, the home energy rebate program, and our weatherization programs. So specifically to the ERLF, our timeline, we submitted our final application in 2024 in October, received our award in November, went out for an RFP. Our office doesn't have really any finance authority, so we went out for a contract with a third-party vendor. After a lot of review, initially we had no interest in North Dakota for the RFP. Prior to even completing our final application, we kind of assumed that our state-owned bank in North Dakota would take on this revolving loan fund. And we met with them, and they basically had zero interest and told us to leave. So then we realized we put it out to a third party, had very little interest, did a lot of networking with banking associations, and luckily got one proposal to come in. And we signed a contract with Lake Agassiz Regional Council in April of 2025. So, it's relatively new. This is our North Dakota's EERLF at a glance. It's almost a $5 million award. We decided early on to go for two targets, a commercial property target and a multifamily target, splitting up, almost half between each. Part of the RFP allows 7% to that third-party contractor for managing the award, and then our office retains 3% for administration and oversight. Our loan requirements are similar to Illinois', a $50,000 minimum and a $1 million maximum, and a project has to first be initiated by conducting an energy audit to determine if it qualifies. One of the issues we see there is North Dakota has an extremely low number of energy auditors that operate within our state. So we've had some struggles with identifying projects, but then once identified, trying to get an approved energy audit completed. Current struggles, finding the right size project, and I think Claire pointed this out, that because of the paperwork and the extra federal requirements, the smaller projects, they're just not considered worthwhile. And our $1 million limit, which we initially thought was a lot, really has not drawn the attention of some of the larger projects that are being completed. Like, we have some large multi-family projects, and they are just not, the $1 million doesn't seem to be worth it to go through the federal requirements and all the procedural activity. Our third-party vendor, I did discuss with them, and they said one of the things they're seeing is just an overall uncertainty in the economic and construction sectors right now. With the current climate of the government, it's having a negative impact and has caused some delays in already planned projects. It's not necessarily unique to this RLF. And And also the additional federal requirements tied to this loan has created some roadblocks when they've attempted to combine it with other funding sources and other loan availability. So due to all of that, there are currently no projects in the works right now. They had one that backed out just recently, but as of right now, we don't have any in our pipeline. So our next steps to help address that is we've talked with them to increase program marketing. Our state energy program has provided some dollars to provide energy auditor training certifications at regional universities to kind of build our energy auditor base, and in hopes that will help spur the projects along. And then, unfortunately, we're projecting significant energy cost increases, which should make the EEL RLF projects more attractive down the road. Lake Agassiz Regional Council, who is the third party, they are planning on kind of doing a roadshow around the state, speaking with additional referral partners and regional councils, and are going to go out with some third-party marketing by the end of the year. So that's about all I had. I mean, I think the one success I can say we have is that we got some federal money and it hasn't been clawed back, and it's available, and we're just at this point having trouble getting it out the door. So.
All right, thanks so much, Ben. Really appreciate the presentation. We'll now turn things to go just a little bit farther down south to Molly, who is in Iowa, and she can talk about the RLF there.
Great. Yeah, not quite neighbors, but almost. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for having me, Molly Kiick. I'm an energy program manager at the Iowa Energy Office, and I really benefited from the first part of this series, so I'm excited to be part of the conversation. I'll quickly go through our timeline, some of the design choices we made, our challenges, and how we're approaching outreach. I want to make sure there's plenty of time for questions. First, our program is really a collaboration between the Economic Development Authority and the Iowa Finance Authority. We're sort of sibling agencies. We share a building and a director, and also share a mission. We have a shared goal of creating opportunities for Iowans to thrive through strategic investment and partnerships. But most importantly, the Finance Authority's deep experience with affordable housing and running affordable housing programs makes them a big partner for our energy affordability efforts. So a little history of the program. Our application was first approved in August 2024, and we did get a 180-day delay while we selected a third-party administrator. We also had a lot of staff turnover during that time before the 180-day clock started officially on February 1st, and I started about a week before that clock officially started. So we pivoted and changed our vision slightly during that time, and we ended up launching a pilot to meet that 180-day requirement in July. So we've been able to accept applications since July. And then I guess one quick note of what's ongoing now. We have requested and just received an approval for an amendment a week or two ago to make some slight changes, and we're hoping to relaunch as our go from the pilot to the full-scale program next February. Our award is just over $7 million. We initially had sort of maxed out the portion that was going to admin and grants, but now we've hopefully right-sized our allocation based on some feedback and early demand to shrink the amount that's going to grants a little bit and repurpose that to get more from our loan program. As I mentioned, we launched initially as a pilot. We're focused just on affordable multifamily housing for that pilot. So we just made a small subset of the funding available at about $1 million. And it's focused exclusively on buildings that participate in IFAS programs, so LIHTC, Section 8, or Home. And we're offering 0% interest rate loans for those buildings. We're capping it at 7 years and generally structuring them as subordinate mortgages. IFA is handling the underwriting, and we've also brought in a third-party administrator to help with some of the contractor outreach and training, particularly on compliance and use of LCP tracker for Davis-Bacon. We don't actually have any applicants yet. We have heard from a handful of building owners, I would say 3 pretty actively, with around 15 eligible buildings. One has completed a number of utility audits, however, a utility audit for each of their programs. And they found some savings, but nothing that required a loan. So we are kind of working through our pipeline, but no applicants yet. In February, we'll be launching that expanded program, expanding eligibility to include commercial buildings as well, hopefully targeting small businesses. A big reason for that is we had allocated some funds to grant funding, but obviously we couldn't really access that for our multifamily buildings. And so expanding to commercial lets us do that, and also hopefully helps us revolve the funds more quickly if we could have a few larger projects in businesses as well. At the same time, when we introduce commercial buildings, we also want to introduce co-lending with some private institutions. As I mentioned, right now, IFA is doing all the underwriting, and we're direct lending for affordable multifamily housing. And IFA could do the underwriting for commercial buildings. It's just a little further from their day-to-day. And so with a co-lending approach, we're hoping we can not only increase the amount of loan funding available, we'll also be bringing in additional expertise and capacity to support our team. Additionally, hopefully that will help build, lender familiarity with these types of projects and preserve a little flexibility by using that co-lending approach. It'll still help, remove federal character from the funds once the 5 years are complete. So that was part of our calculus as well. Pain points are going to sound really similar to what we've heard from the past couple, so apologies for my lack of originality. But for multifamily specifically, we found that a lot of the residential audit requirements seem to be driven maybe more by single family. For instance, the home performance assessment, really isn't applicable to multifamily. And so right now we're creating sort of a bespoke training guide to help make that a little bit clearer for applicants. And I guess I'll maybe note one other thing. Right before this call, we also found out that we'll have the ability to create a custom audit template for our state. So I don't know if other folks are already pursuing that, but through the help desk on audit template, so far it's been really easy to create a more customized audit template that's more aimed at our specific program requirements, and also being able to maybe direct folks more directly to cut down confusion. So I'm really excited about that. Grant funding, as I mentioned, is not available for multifamily, and Claire already mentioned that can be a big hurdle. Audits come with a cost. So we are working with utilities to provide cost-free audits with our existing programs, but also this week we just launched a multifamily audit grant program with SEP funds, because there are some buildings that aren't in utility territory that has those free audits, and also sometimes it's split between one utility providing gas and another electricity, and that complicates the findings from the audit and what they'll provide. And so we're hoping that that'll drive some more interest as well now that we have that grant program available. And the last one is maybe a little more specific to Iowa, but when we initially submitted our application, it was with some other applications in mind, particularly some training awards, which are still sort of in flux or on hold. And so we had assumed there would be more workforce training happening around specific technologies, and the savings estimates that we had were based on a lot of apartments converting to heat pumps. And I'm not sure that's still likely to be something that we're seeing. And so as part of our amendment, we did include sort of a broader efficiency focus and less of a focus on any specific technology. And so I'm still sort of figuring out what that means for some of our targets, but we're able to preserve our flexibility for a broad range of measures. A quick note on outreach. As I mentioned, we're working closely with the Finance Authority, and so we have a great insight into what buildings are able to participate. There's around 450 eligible buildings and 25,000 units. So lets us do really targeted outreach. And based on that data, we can really prioritize relationships with the utilities and do outreach directly through them. They have a pipeline of buildings that have already received audits and found a lot of savings that haven't implemented them yet because they didn't have the financing. And so We haven't had anyone come through that path yet, but we have identified some really strong potential targets, I think, through that path. Great. So happy to move on to the questions. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks so much. And thanks so much, everybody, for the presentations. I thought they were really great. Again, we are moving on to the Q&A session for this discussion before we turn things over and have some questions for you in the audience. But I do have a couple questions for the speakers here. I think one is a clarification question. I think, Sarah, I think all of you mentioned that you're using SEP funds in some way to help support the EERLF lending. Are those going to be SEP annual or SEP IIJA funds that you're using for this purpose? Or both?
For our program, we're using the SEP annual funds, which is its own problem, where there'll be a really tight window where folks will be able to apply for and then complete those audits.
North Dakota is used primarily the IIJA funds.
I am not sure since I'm not with IEPA.
No problem. No problem.
The IEPA funds are actually state funds, so.
Thank you, Veronica.
Yeah.
So a couple questions here for our speakers. I think we'll start with Claire here. And so Claire, obviously, now that the One Big Beautiful Bill is now law, I know you're originally thinking that you're going to have these being used for the tax incentives, but obviously some of these tax incentives are going to be sunsetting, with in a more expedited time frame. What plans does IFA have to reorient the RLF once most of these energy tax credits sunset, if at all?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So we're doing a couple of things. So for one, I mentioned that the program will bridge both tax credits and Illinois Solar for All incentives. So as that's a state program, that's not going away. Additionally, we actually have an amendment out with IEPA to our intergovernmental agreement right now to amend the program to allow us to bridge other incentives. So we're also looking to include REAP grants, our utility rebates. Ameren and ComEd are the utilities in Illinois provide energy efficiency rebates. So we're looking to add those to things that we can bridge. As I mentioned, we also have a co-lending loan that we're not really focusing on as much right now, but might become more relevant as the tax credits go away. So there are a number of things. So one, expanding the universe of things that we can bridge to focusing more on co-lending if that in the future, if that becomes necessary. And then one other thing I wanted to mention is that the geothermal tax credits aren't phasing out quite as quickly as wind and solar. And so hoping that maybe we can get more interest in some geothermal programs and take advantage of those tax credits while they're around. So those are the plans that we have in place for keeping the program relevant even after those tax credits go away.
That's good to hear. And I think energy storage is also another one that's a potential, it's
Yes.
kicking around. So that's something you could certainly consider as well. But thank you. So a question for Ben here. I think you mentioned in your opening remarks that you had some challenges finding a partner to help partner with this loan and start kind of implementing the program. And I think that's something that several states have mentioned to be in the past, is that they've had some struggles finding capital partners to help kind of manage these funds or co-lend alongside these funds. So what advice would you have for other states, kind of given your own experiences here?
Yeah, so I think some of the best advice, our state energy program primarily and historically has always been a grant funding program. We did not really get into a revolving loan fund or the banking side. So when we wrote the RFP, we're not bankers. So our RFP went out and we started getting questions, heavy financial questions that no one in our office had any idea what they're talking about. So we really had to sit down and have them kind of explain why this was important. We saw this money and we thought, oh, this will be simple and everybody will be happy. And, it was just a real hard sell based when we started talking about the federal oversight and the Davis-Bacon requirements and all the compliance that needed to be done. So I think my advice would be to early on, if you don't, a lot of states have existing revolving loan funds and although we have a state-owned bank, that they're just pretty much a true banking organization. So that was a misstep on our part, and maybe looking back, I don't know if we would have applied for it, right? Knowing that we really weren't experienced with the revolving loan fund aspect of a program, and seeing how it's kind of taxed our office in a way that we weren't expecting. So.
Got it. Got it. Yep. No, that definitely sounds like it was a huge challenge given what your office has worked on in the past. Another question here. This is an audience question for Molly. Molly, can you speak more about what you're doing for the bespoke reporting and who is helping with that?
Yeah, and maybe I misspoke. It's not so much the reporting; it's the audit template, template, if you will, itself. There's an EERLF. So I guess, and maybe not everybody's using audit template, but for commercial buildings and multifamily, I think the audit template is really the main path for the main software for audits. And there's an EERLF specific template, but we've been working with the folks who work on audit template at PNNL, and I think one of them is actually on the call. So hi, Supriya. But working through the help desk is how we got connected with them, which is just right on the website. They're able to create. Basically, we duplicated the EERLF template for Iowa, and then we're also able to change. To adjust some of the fields that might be required or optional. There are some fields that aren't normally shown in the EERLF template. And so literally, the hour before I was here was my first insight into that. So I'm very new to what's possible. But I think some of the advantages that's going to bring is, again, just being able to address some of the sort of frequently asked questions that we get about the audit requirements. I think it'll be easier to build that right into the tool so the information is there as folks are completing an audit. So hopefully clearer communication. And also, because it's a template just for our state, I also can immediately see more to the reporting point. I don't have to wait for someone to download and send the report to me, which is normally how our application process would work. But now once an audit is completed, I can see it in the audit template system. And so I'll have a little better view for our pipeline and know when to expect applications are coming in, which is really helpful. And have a little more of sort of that database functionality by seeing that view. So I hope that answers the question, and I hope I didn't speak out of turn there. But yeah, I was really excited about it and so happy that I got to, had that call right before this so I could speak about it today.
I just want to jump in and say that that's really interesting to hear and probably something that Illinois should think about moving forward, because right now the way we're doing it is we're just having them send us their audit and we're putting it in audit template for them because it's still so early in the process. We're like, we don't want to add another step. So we're putting it through audit template, but that's probably not a long-term sustainable plan.
Right. And one more question for you, Molly. This is for your fund. You mentioned you had several common pain points with other states in terms of getting your program off the ground. But were there any sort of unique challenges related to, putting out financing for affordable multifamily housing projects that you didn't anticipate when you established the fund? And how'd you kind of get past those?
Yeah, I think, well, the main thing is maybe not so unique to multifamily, but it is just, there are so many requirements involved in being able to share those completely, but also clearly, I think is a really big challenge. And I think that's maybe exacerbated with affordable multifamily, where there's already sort of a tangle of regulations that they're working with. And some of those intersect. So a couple things that I think have helped is, number one, because we're limiting to buildings that are already working in the Iowa Finance Authority's programs, they're pretty used to those regulations and have a pretty good sense of their own capacity and ability to take on some of those requirements. And so that's also why we limited to buildings with 20 or more units, because there are some owners who have, maybe a smaller property with only 3 or 4 units. And we were worried that they might take on a loan, not realizing all of the sort of burden that comes along with that benefit. So I think having a narrower view is one solution that we found there. And then also as a part of our application process, in addition to the paper application, before they can be approved, we also ask them to do sort of an interview, or it's basically they'll just have a conversation with us. But we really want to go through the requirements together and make sure, again, they know exactly what the requirements are before they accept the funding. And I think it's also an opportunity to go through, if we do have any open questions as a part of the loan and underwriting process, to gather some additional information. Because I think as Ben was saying, there's such a variety of the scale of projects that we might see. Some are relatively simple and straightforward, and some are much larger and complex. If you're talking about a $50,000 upgrade versus $1 million, right? Those look really different, and we might have different requirements before we feel comfortable making that loan or approving the audit. And so right now we are creating some guidance that sort of, the original idea was a decision tree, but maybe it's more of like a checkbox system for audit requirements to kind of recommend more detail on audits that are a bit larger or more complex. And then similarly, we've been working with IFA and the underwriting team to really simplify requirements for smaller loans, because we don't want to layer on additional costs for something like an appraisal or a title pull when it's really not necessary. But we're also trying to preserve our ability to get some of that documentation on some of those larger loans. So I don't know, it really is a balance of trying to be very clear while also cutting down on complexity and preserving a little flexibility on our side, depending on what types of projects we're seeing.
Great. So if you have any other questions for our speakers, please feel free to put them in the chat. But now we'd like to just ask the audience a few questions here, just to kind of get a little discussion going for the remainder of our time. So one of the questions, I think one of the main pain points that I think we've heard from, I think, all of the states on the call and in the chat really here, is the challenge around the audit process and with auditors. You mentioned, I think we've heard that there are, not enough auditors in states to help kind of drive some of the work. Obviously, audits are not free; they cost some money, and that is the barrier to implementation. And in some certain cases, audit tools from DOE aren't, university applicable to everybody in the audience, particularly with territories, which can be an additional challenge for them. So, besides the audit process and the struggles with finding, capital providers to work with or co-lend you, what challenges are you experiencing for your loan funds still as part of this that's kind of, unique to your fund? And feel free to unmute yourself and speak up if you'd like to add to the conversation. Otherwise, I may pick on a couple folks to add to the conversation.
So we've heard anecdotally that, this is Dakota, I'm with the California Energy Commission. We've heard anecdotally that Build America, Buy America is a problem.
Okay.
But we haven't done extensive outreach to see if that's true across the board.
Has anyone applied? Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Just quickly on that one, Dakota, I would think that most projects that trigger Buy America, Build America probably already are complying those requirements anyway, because they may be public sector, kind of projects. No?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the question, Jay.
Did you say that you've heard that Buy America, Build America requirements could be onerous?
Yes.
So I was just positing a theory that, given it's only applicable to a subset of building types, I was wondering whether those projects, it must be the case that those projects aren't having to comply with those requirements normally, but they must comply with them here because of the federal funds.
Exactly. That's absolutely correct. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have a loan program for K through 12 schools, but the state has had a long-term loan program for K through 12 schools,
Right.
which is state funded and therefore does not have these federal reporting requirements.
Right.
So yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Thanks so much, Danuta. What other challenges are you still experiencing with implementing your EERLFs now that you're getting closer to starting to make loans?
Sam, I'll just put in a plug.
Sure.
And we had a brief discussion about this at the last EERLF peer exchange. Um, it took a while in this program to get to an exemption from DBRA for residential. So what I would suggest to folks is if you're running into problems where you just can't get projects and it's because of federal requirements, one option that you could consider is pivoting back to make a change in approach from what you originally decided, because nobody wanted to use these funds for residential, because having the requirements apply for Davis-Bacon for every project, you would never get projects done. So all I mean to say is that a strategy could be that running into bottlenecks in trying to launch a successful program in commercial or multifamily, you could consider an option of redeploying the funds in the single family residential sector. You still have audit requirements. It's been reported, as noted here, home energy score certainly doesn't work in Puerto Rico, and it doesn't work anywhere, quite frankly, because there are some statutory requirements it doesn't address. And so it's really awkward that somebody has to use the tool, but then they have to supplement it with a bunch of other things. That can't go away, unfortunately. These are statutory requirements for the energy audits. But Davis-Bacon can go away if you target your funds to address single-family residential. So just plant that seed with folks to think about and keep in the back of their mind as a plan B, if you will, rather than like turning your funds back to the DOE.
Yes, Melanie.
Hi, everyone. Melanie in Alaska. We have a residential energy efficiency program that we're looking to build up and are still in the very early stages. And Jeff, I'll respond to your email after this call. For the energy audit requirements, so we're residential, we'd have to comply with the home energy score. We're in the same bucket as Puerto Rico, where HES does not work in Alaska. We have an Alaska version of HES that we've been using for years that works with HUD and a number of other DOE programs called AK-WARM. What is the process to have all of the regulations say any alternative to HES has to be approved by the secretary?
Yeah, Melanie, let me chime in quickly. What I would recommend highly that you do, reach out to your DOE project officer. They're the one that you have to start the process with. You say, look, we have this longstanding tool that we've been using in the States, been very successful, yada, yada, yada. What they're going to ask you to do is probably go through a detailed analysis of how the tool that's being used in the current program meets the statutory requirements, or if it doesn't, what would you propose to do, again, to kind of have a supplement to the tool?
Okay. And given the current federal environment that we're in, that is a viable path?
DOE, yes.
Okay.
Some states, the DOE, I don't have the states, I don't know the states, but I know some states have received approval for kind of alternate software. So it is not the case that you only can use Audit Template and Home Energy Score. You just have to make sure that the tools meet the statutory requirements. There was some language originally in DOE wanting preferred tools that were data sync compatible, but the DOE is willing to give up on those provisions if it's a tool that works well and still meets the statutory requirements. So I think you should just reach out to your DOE project officer.
Will do. Thank you.
Sure.
That's positive. Much appreciated.
So I think kind of building on that, for the audience, now that even though we're getting close, what technical assistance would you still like to see from either DOE or NASEO on the topic of ERLFs, now that you move to implementation? I've heard some questions about marketing. I've heard questions about you getting the word out. So what would you like to see for further technical assistance from either of our organizations?
One of the things that I'd like to see, because I've been trying to research it more, given the anecdotal information that we received about BABA, is waivers. Have there been waivers granted for specific projects? for specific materials? And what are they? And is there a database? Could DOE put something like that together? Another question that I had was, since BABA goes across many different programs and departments within the federal government, if there's a waiver that's, say, been granted to material that was used in a Department of Defense project, does DOE projects get to use that one too? So a lot of information and clarity about the waiver process, maybe a waiver database, would be really helpful. Because as we jump into that, it would be really great to be able to provide that information.
Sure, we're happy to reach out about that. What other areas would you like to see for technical assistance?
I'd love to hear how others are using technical assistance and all the resources available. Molly, that was fantastic to hear the audit help desk. Would love to hear, I think, Jeff, I know that you are on all cylinders in many different ways. What are all the resources and what are others using, so that I might think, oh, that would be a great thing for us in Alaska.
Yeah, I agree. The ability to exchange information, to reach out to each other with a question, would be
great.
really, really helpful.
Great segue. So come to our next peer exchange, because we expect to be announcing a bulletin board tool that states will be able to use to very easily ask questions, share information, because kind of it's a little awkward to try to do that at a once every other month peer exchange meeting. And it should just be something that's like more dynamic. So we've been testing out a system and are hoping to launch that on or about the time of the next peer exchange meeting.
If I can keep shouting at people on this call, Jeff also, for the IO Energy Office, reviewed some of our program documents before they were published and gave us some good advice on tweaking some of our language and making sure everything was clear and in line with requirements. So thank you again, Jeff. That was really helpful.
Same for Illinois. Reviewed our term sheet and some other documents.
Right. Well, we have a few minutes left in the call, so I think I want to turn things back to the speakers to I have one more question for each of you, for all of you really, is that, what would be, given your experiences so far and moving forward, what would be kind of the top one or two takeaways that you would have, the other states in the call leave here with? Anyone for our three state speakers?
I can start. I'll just say, there's still quite a bit of time, right? We just funded this program in April. We're sitting here all worried about it. At least North Dakota is. But looking out, we have, 3 years to get those funds out. For us, it's not a lot of money. So my hope is if you get one project rolling, someone's going to look across the fence and wonder how that happened, and maybe we can spread the good news and make the program really be successful.
That's great.
Yeah, and maybe kind of pairing with that optimism, it is really encouraging in a way to hear how many, we have a lot of the same struggles, but just to hear from other people how they're finding creative approaches or finding workarounds, finding tools to help with some of those challenges. So as Ben said, the long time horizon, I think there's more time to figure out things, and I'm looking forward to the next session where it sounds like there's going to be more ability to connect and share those in a more ad hoc way with our peers. So I'm excited about that.
I guess I was racking my brain because, we haven't successfully closed a loan yet. So I don't know if I have the best advice. But I would say, like reach out to your fellow state agencies or organizations, maybe not even state agencies, but organizations across the state and see what they offer that you can take advantage of, because there were a lot of programs that I know about now that I didn't know about at the beginning that Illinois offers, and try to, tailor the program for what makes sense for your state. What works in Illinois might not work somewhere else. As I mentioned, we chose not to do residential single family because we already have a lot of resources for them. And so we wanted to focus on a different sector. But that might not be the case in your state. So reach out to your fellow agencies. I know sometimes we can all get siloed in our own little bubble in what we're working on, but there's been a lot of great collaboration, I think, that's been happening between the Illinois Finance Authority and the Illinois EPA in the past couple months, and making our programs complementary. And I think that's really going to help us moving forward.
All right, thanks so much. So this concludes our call. One quick reminder, Jeff, if you want to just remind everybody of the date and time of the ERLF working group next call.
I think it's December 10. Shoot. December 10th at 1 p.m.
Okay. And we'll make sure to send that out so that way you all are able to have the link to log in and join that. Should be a very productive conversation. All right, with that, thank you so much, everybody, for being on the call. Really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you so much to our 3 speakers here for their great presentations. We're looking forward to talking with you soon. Have a great rest of the week.